Welcome to this explainer on the mechanics of Oracle DataGuard Redo Transport Services. Look, if you're managing enterprise database environments, understanding exactly how your transactional data moves from your primary server to your standby is literally the heartbeat of your disaster recovery strategy. Today, we're taking a focused, no-nonsense look at the linear journey of reader data, breaking down the exact mechanisms that keep your infrastructure resilient. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover an intro to Redo transport, primary database processes, sync versus async transport modes, standby database reception, and finally, network gap resolution.
Section 1. Intro to Redo transport. Let's lay down the foundational concepts.
So, Redo Transport Services, commonly referred to as RTS. As you can see here, these are the core transport services that automate the transfer of redo data from a primary database over to one or more standby destinations. But it's not just a basic file copy. RTS actively manages your network transmission paths and bandwidth allocation. Why? To completely minimize data lag and ensure rock-solid data protection. The main takeaways here are automation and speed. It's a continuously managed flow designed to keep your standby environment protected without you having to manually intervene.
Moving right along to Section 2, Primary Database Processes. This is where the journey begins.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the background processes coordinate data capture and transmission. Everything kicks off right here on your primary server. In Step 1, the log writer process, or LGWR, scoops up your transactional redo data from the buffer and writes it sequentially straight to the online redo logs, the ORLs. Then, in Step 2, the network servers step up. Depending on your setup, these processes, known as LNS, NSS, or NSA, read that data stream either from the redo buffer or the ORLs and securely transfer it across Oracle Net. Finally, we have Step 3 with the archiver process, ARCN. Now, you probably know ARCN for local archiving, but here it performs vital remote archiving, which is absolutely crucial for resolving synchronization gaps if your network ever drops.
Section 3. Transport Modes. Sync versus async. Let's talk about how we actually ship this data.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct trade-off between strict data protection and primary database performance. First up, synchronous, or SYNC mode. This uses the NSA process to ship redo directly from the log buffer. The catch? The primary database will not issue a commit acknowledgement until that data is safely written to the standby redo logs, the SRLs. That means zero data exposure, which is fantastic, but it also makes you highly dependent on network latency. On the flip side, we have asynchronous, or ASNC mode. This uses the NSA process to intentionally isolate your primary from that network latency. The primary database just commits independently of the standby. It heavily optimizes your performance, but it may introduce a marginal amount of transport lag. You really have to pick the right tool for the job here.
Section 4. Standby database reception. Let's follow that data across the network. Once the data reaches the standby side, reception is handled by the remote file server, or RFS. As the definition points out, this standby background process essentially intercepts the incoming redo stream sent over from the primary's transmission processes. The moment it gets hold of that stream, the RFS writes it directly into the local standby redo logs, the SRLs. It's a very straightforward, targeted mechanic. The RFS just captures the stream and secures it locally on disk, so your standby database has exactly what it needs to stay in sync.
Finally, Section 5. Network gap resolution. Because we all know networks aren't perfect.
In an ideal scenario, that data stream never breaks, but enterprise networks can be a little unpredictable. So what happens when a disruption occurs? Well, DataGuard has built-in fail-safes. First, the FAL client, which sits on the standby side, actively monitors for any missing sequences in the redo stream. The second it spots a gap, it automatically requests those missing sequences from the primary's FAL server. While that's happening, the primary's archiver process, ARCN, proactively reads its local archived redo logs to find that exact missing data. The instant your network reconnects, ARCN passes those missing sequences right over to the standby's RFS. It's a perfectly coordinated rescue operation, so absolutely no data gets left behind.
So, we've walked through the mechanics of how all of this works, but the success of this architecture really comes down to your physical hardware. Think about it. If sync mode guarantees zero data exposure but absolutely hinges on network latency, is your current infrastructure truly robust enough to support zero data loss without crippling your primary database performance? It's the ultimate disaster recovery balancing act. I'd highly recommend taking a hard look at your actual network capabilities before locking in your configuration. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.